Hello, good morning and good evening to our Rupani Foundation Global Friends and Family. Thank you for joining another webinar series of Rupani Foundation USA. I'm your host, Dilshad Meghani, Community Outreach Coordinator at RFUSA. I am so excited to have Dr. Syed Mehboob Shah as our distinguished speaker and provide an opportunity to learn more about, number one, burdens of depression and suicidal ideation in villages of Gilgit region. Number two, identify the disparity of depression and suicidal ideation by gender. Number three, identify the burden and key risk factors for suicide in youth. Throughout the presentation, you will be able to submit questions for today's guest speaker in the chat or the Q&A box. The last 15 minutes of this online seminar will be designated for all your questions to Dr. Shah. Before we get started, I would like to go over today's agenda with you. First, we will be going over some webinar guidelines so you know how to properly participate in today's event. After that, I'll offer a brief introduction to our Rupani Foundation panelists, as well as our guest speaker. Then our guest speaker will get a chance to share his research on improving mental health in Himalayan mountain villages. Lastly, we will end today's online seminar with some Q&A and some acknowledgements. To ensure the highest quality of experience, kindly keep your mic muted at all times. Questions should be submitted via chat box for the Q&A on your Zoom screen. Attendees who are watching us on Facebook page can type their questions in the comment box below. All the questions will be addressed at the end of the webinar. This event is being recorded. This event is being recorded and will be made available online concluding this series. To evaluate your experience, we ask that you please take a minute to complete the survey at the end of this webinar. Moving forward, I'm excited to introduce today's panelists, starting off with Mr. Nasruddin Rupani, who is the chairman of Rupani Foundation. Next, we have Operations Manager Dominic Ferrino. May I request Mr. Ferrino to share his thought with all of us? Mr. Ferrino, please.
Thank you, Dilshad. Hello and welcome. We are honored to have Dr. Shah join us today. And on behalf of Rupani Foundation USA, we welcome Dr. Shah. Rupani Foundation is a nonprofit organization that has a primary focus on the development of early childhood and education in local communities, promoting a holistic, sustainable education for future generations. Rupani Foundation also functions as a catalyst to the development of an economic and social infrastructures for our communities. Today's topic of discussion will no doubtably educate and bring awareness to our listeners. I am sure we all have had someone we are close to or heard about deal with depression and suicide. And Dr. Shah will be here and be able to elaborate on this topic in detail. So thank you all for joining us today. And with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Dilshad.
Thank you, Mr. Ferrino. Now I would like to introduce our respected guest speaker, Dr. Syed Mehboob Shah. Dr. Shah is a physician specialized in community medicine and professor at the Institute of Public Health, College of Medicine and Health Sciences, United Arab Emirates University. He completed his medical degree MBBS at Peshawar University, Pakistan, MPH in International Health and PhD in Epidemiology from the School of Public Health, Houston, University of Texas, USA in 2001. Harvard Medical School selected Dr. Shah for a one-year Global Clinical Scholars Research Training Program, where he completed one-year certificate course in the design and implementation of clinical trials. Dr. Shah contributed to clinical care, public health practices, research and teaching at the Aga Khan University in Karachi, Pakistan during 1992 to 2001. As a research scientist, he served the Washington State Government, USA during 2001 to 2004. And Health Quality Councils of Canadian government during 2004 to 2008. He taught master's and a PhD student as an associate professor in the Department of Community Health and Epidemiology, College of Medicine, University of Saskatchewan, Canada, during 2004 to 2008. He co-developed a clinical research method courses for surgery, medicine, and family medicine residents, and mentored master's and PhD students. Dr. Shah was honored with the Outstanding Student Mentorship Award by the Canadian Coalition for Global Health. Dr. Shah is serving the United Arab Emirates University for the last 10 years, and he played a key role to develop new MPH and PhD courses at the Institute of Public Health. He has mentored MPH and PhD students and US Fulbright scholars. He was honored with the Outstanding Student Mentor Award by the Michigan State University Program in Public Health. Dr. Shah has published more than 100 peer-reviewed research articles in international biomedical journals. Dr. Shah is one of the World Heart Federation emerging leaders for non-communicable diseases, NCDs, prevention and WHO-nominated NCDs surveillance specialist for the countries in EMRO region. Currently, Dr. Shah is mentoring 5 Emirati PhD students and 1 Fulbright scholar from the University of Minnesota, with research focused on social determinants of NCDs, mental health, and on health issues during early childhood. With that, I'm going to turn the whole session to Dr. Saeed M. Shah. Dr. Shah, please.
Thank you very much, Dilshad and Mr. Freno, for all your help during this session. And I'm very grateful for the Rupani Foundation giving me the opportunity to share my research finding with, particularly back home with my colleagues and my, fellow villagers. So it is really a very nice occasion. So I will be talking about 3 main issues in our region. One on depression, the second one about suicidal ideation, suicidal ideation, and third one about the people who committed suicide and what were the major factors for doing this for this situation. So these are learning outcome for this session. कि इस सेशन में आपको पता चलेगा कि हमारे इलाके में डिप्रेशन कितना ज्यादा है, 100 में से कितने लोगों को डिप्रेशन है और सोशियो डेमोग्राफिक वजूहात क्या हैं उनके, और दूसरा मेन ऑब्जेक्टिव ये है कि वहाँ पे सुसाइडल आइडिएशन कितना ज्यादा है इन इलाकों में जिनमें हमने स्टडी की, जैसे गेजर, जगोजाल और नगेर डिस्ट्रिक्ट में। और फिर हम आइडेंटिफाई करेंगे burden of mortality due to suicide and its causes. As I will be speaking English as well as in Urdu, because a lot of my audience are from my region, some of them might not understand English, so I would like to make sure that they are clear about it. Okay. So I would like, one of my title was, prevention first. So what means by prevention first? So this was a saying from our Aga Khan Institute Chancellor, His Highness Aga Khan. If one of your hospital bed is occupied by a person with a disease that could have been prevented at the community level or primary healthcare level, then the healthcare system has serious issues. So it is very important that there are 2 major things, how we prevent diseases and promote health, and then how we treat patients. So these both aspects are very, very important, which is particularly our recent epidemic has highlighted the importance of prevention and health promotion. I'm showing you a picture and you can see it, and you can see that there are kids drowning in the stream, and there are people who are rescuing them from the stream, otherwise they will die, they will drown, right? But in this team, they are not thinking about from where they are coming and why they are drowning. So because their training is focused on only those who are in trouble and then treat them. So this is a clinical approach of healthcare management. It is very important part of it, but as well as, so someone comes here and looks at it and says, let me see why, from where these kids are coming drowning in the stream. So he go upstream and then finds that actually there is a broken bridge. So where kids are trying to cross the bridge and falling down in the stream, and then he fixed the bridge, and then there was no more drowning. So this is an example of prevention. So we need both prevention and treatment. So I'm giving another example because this study we conducted as part of our NCD prevention program. So in these study villages, we collected data about why heart disease is so becoming common in our region, why diabetes, which was unknown, emerging as major issue, and why cancer in our region. So we studied all these in our study, but I'm just sharing about the suicide. This is one example, when early childhood, our coronary arteries, this is a picture of coronary artery which supplies blood to our heart. यहाँ पे आप देखेंगे कि ये बिल्कुल क्लीन एंड क्लियर है अर्ली एज में चाइल्डहुड में, लेकिन आप देखेंगे कि आहिस्ता आहिस्ता ये कम नैरो होती जा रही है क्योंकि हमारे पुअर डाइट की वजह से यहाँ कोलेस्ट्रॉल जमा होता है और इस दौरान कोई अलामत नहीं होती तो हम डॉक्टर के पास नहीं जाते। हम जब जाते हैं जब ये पूरा बंद करती है और चेस्ट पेन शुरू होता है। तो इसलिए न सिर्फ इसका इलाज जरूरी है बल्कि इसकी प्रिवेंशन भी इतनी ही अहमियत की हामिल है। जैसे ये 4 बीमारियों का जिक्र किया, लेकिन ये बीमारियां क्यों होते हैं, इनके वजूहात जो है ये है कि हमारा ब्लड प्रेशर ज्यादा हो, हमारा ब्लड कोलेस्ट्रॉल ज्यादा हो, हमारा ग्लूकोज लेवल ज्यादा हो, इसकी वजह से। बट ये फिर हमारे ये ब्लड प्रेशर ज्यादा क्यों होता है, क्यों हम ज्यादा नमक का इस्तेमाल करते हैं या हमारे जहन में बहुत स्ट्रेस टेंशन है, उसकी वजह से फिर हमें ब्लड प्रेशर ज्यादा होता है। इसी तरह जो है हमारा जो है शुगर ज्यादा होता है, वेट ज्यादा होता है क्योंकि हम फिजिकल एक्टिविटी नहीं करते हैं, खाना सही नहीं खाते हैं। तो यहाँ पे इन बीमारियों का इलाज का ताल्लुक है, इसी तरह इनकी प्रिवेंशन बहुत जरूरी है, जिसके लिए हमें उन फैक्टर को देखना होता है कि वो क्या चीजें हैं जिनकी वजह से ये बीमारियां हमारे इलाके में होती हैं। इसी तरह ही सुसाइड और डिप्रेशन के लिए भी हमें ये देखना होता है कि सिर्फ कि इसकी वजूहात क्या है और हमारे इलाके में ये किस लेवल पे है, ताकि हम दूसरे लोगों के साथ कंपेयर करें। और हमें जब हम बेस लाइन डेटा पता होगा तो हम ये देख सकते हैं कि हमने जब कुछ काम किया तो उसमें क्या फर्क आया। तो इसलिए जो है वो प्रिवेलेंस बहुत जरूरी है। अच्छा, इसमें आप देख रहे हैं, एक आप पढ़ भी सकते हैं। यहाँ पे मैं एक बहुत अच्छा आर्टिकल न्यू इंग्लैंड जर्नल में सुसाइड के बारे में छपा है, उसमें बहुत सारी वजूहात हैं। उनमें एक बड़ी वजह यह है सुसाइड की कि उन लोगों में जिसको इंडिजिनस पॉपुलेशन कहते हैं, जैसे हमारे इलाके के लोग हैं, जहाँ पे लोग जो है एक खास कल्चर, खास स्पेशल अटैचमेंट अपने जमीन और अपने इलाके से और खास आइडेंटिटी और जुबान, ये वो चीजें हैं अगर किसी तरीके से उनमें तब्दीली आ जाए तो उसकी वजह से उन इलाकों में या उन मुल्कों में सुसाइड का रेट बहुत बढ़ जाता है। जैसा कि कनाडा में वहाँ के जो ओरिजिनल लोग थे, इनको अभी बाद में जो काकेशियन यानी गोरे जो है यूके से वहाँ आए और उनके कल्चर और उनके तहजीब पे असरअंदाज हुए, उसके बाद उनमें कई चीजें उसमें हो गई कि उनमें मेंटल डिजीजेस, डिप्रेशन, सुसाइड ज्यादा हो गई। और इन इलाकों में सबसे ज्यादा सुसाइड जो है एब्रिजिनल कैनेडियन पॉपुलेशन में है। तो मैंने जब मैं कनाडा में पढ़ाता था तो एक इंटरेस्टिंग स्टडी की, मैंने एक स्केल लिया जिससे हम मेजर करते हैं कि प्रेगनेंसी दौरान किसी को कोई डिप्रेशन तो नहीं है। तो उसमें मैंने वहाँ के जो गोरे या काकेशियन पॉपुलेशन उनका एक सैंपल लिया, जो प्रेग्नेंट माए थे उनका लिया। फिर मैंने वहाँ पे जो इंडिजिनस पॉपुलेशन है जिसको एबोरिजिनल पॉपुलेशन कहते हैं, उनके जो प्रेग्नेंट खवातीन का हमने चेक किया कि उनमें से कितने को डिप्रेशन के सिम्टम है। फिर हमने जो है वही इंस्ट्रूमेंट से अपने इलाके में गिजर में वहाँ प्रेग्नेंट माओ का चेक किया कि उनको कितना ये डिप्रेशन है, तो आप देखेंगे कि जो कॉकेशियन कैनेडियन है वहां के प्रेग्नेंट खवातीन में ये जो शरह है 3.5, 100 में सिर्फ 3.5 को डिप्रेशन था। जब मैंने जो इंडिजिनस कनाडा की पॉपुलेशन है खवातीन, उनमें जब हमने चेक किया तो 31.2, मतलब इनसे बहुत ज्यादा। और उसके मुकाबले जब हमारे वहाँ मैरिड खवातीन का चेक किया गिजर में, तो आधी खवातीन को जो है सिम्टम्स ऑफ डिप्रेशन। तो आप अंदाजा कर सकते हैं कि कितने ज्यादा रिस्क में हैं हमारे इलाके के लोग, पर्टिकुलरली खवातीन। तो इसलिए हमने ये स्टडी की, हमने एक वहाँ पे लोगों में इन हार्ट डिजीज और मेंटल हेल्थ के बारे में अवेयरनेस शुरू करने के लिए एक मैंने प्रोग्राम वहाँ शुरू किया है अपने साथियों के साथ, जिसको हम कहते हैं सिल्क रूट टू हेल्थ। इसमें हम चाहते हैं कि हम अपने जो हम वहाँ लोकली वहाँ रहते हैं या वहाँ से बाहर है, जैसे अमेरिका में रहते हैं, कनाडा में, या जैसे मैं यहाँ यूएई में रहता हूँ, कि हम लोग बाहर से भी कैसे हम अपने इलाकों के लिए हेल्प करें। कि ये हमारी नॉलेज, हमारे एजुकेशन का तकाजा है कि हम न सिर्फ यहाँ पे काम करें, बल्कि जब भी टाइम मिले हम अपने इलाके के लिए कुछ करें। तो इसी जज्बे से हमने यहाँ पे स्टडीज की इन इलाकों में। और ये एंड यू कैन सी दैट दिस एरिया आई एम टॉकिंग अबाउट गिलगित बल्तिस्तान, it is situated in north of Pakistan. Here the red color shows the region where I conducted these studies. And you can see that our area is very beautiful area. It is very nice area and very you can see a typical village where you can see river flowing during the in the village. And so what happened that when one of the major reason of high mortality in women due to suicide was this lethal weapon available here, so this river, so when they are in stress, they jump. One of the major cause of agent of suicide was jumping in this river. So this is my team of excellence, and I was fortunate to have the help of our local women and men who are very, very highly educated, like 7 of them nurses at Aga University who graduated from bachelor in nursing, highly talented. And all these contributed without any fee or anything, voluntarily contributed to conduct this survey. I had one grant here in my university where I was able to get state-of-art instrument like blood pressure, height, weight, so we can measure all these in our villages. So here I am showing you a population pyramid. This on the right side is the population pyramid of all 3 districts like Hunza, Gojal, Nagar, and Ghizar. And you can see what it shows, that every human should survive at least 80 years. 80 years is our expected life. But a lot of people, unfortunately, die early, prematurely, before being 80 years old. And then you can compare it with Canadian population. Like in Canada, those who are 70 years and older, 11% of men and 13% of women are still surviving and at home. But when we compare this to our region, only 5% of men and 4% of females. So that is totally against the global literature. In global literature, in developed countries, usually females survive more. In our case, more males survive than females. So this is a great disparity in mortality. So we can improve this survival, if we work on this. Otherwise, our communities, our villages are facing a huge problem. अब आइंदा हमारे वहाँ तेजी से जो है ये शुगर की बीमारी बहुत ज्यादा होगी। पहले यहाँ पे किसी को नहीं होता था, और दिल की बीमारियां अर्ली एज में होगी, और लोग जो है 35 साल के एज में, 40 साल के एज में, 45 साल के एज में इससे वो होंगे। तो हमारे इलाके में इस वक्त सबसे बड़ा मसला जो है हार्ट डिजीज और कैंसर का है, बनिस्बत सुसाइड। वो भी एक इम्पॉर्टेंट है, लेकिन ये भी बहुत इम्पॉर्टेंट मसला है हमारे इलाके में। तो उसके लिए हम सब ने मेहनत करना है, सब ने मिलकर काम करना है। तो मैं सबसे पहले आपको प्रिवेलेंस दिखाता हूं कि हमारे इलाके में प्रिवेलेंस का क्या शरह है। तो हमने इस स्टडी में क्या इस्तेमाल किया मेजर करने के लिए, हमने एक सबसे अच्छा और वाइडली यूज स्केल इस्तेमाल किया जिसको बेक स्केल कहते हैं। तो बेक स्केल के मदद से हमने डिप्रेशन को मेजर किया। फिर हमने सुसाइडल आइडिएशन। सुसाइडल आइडिएशन मतलब ये है कि आदमी, आप हमारे गांव में एक को अगर सुसाइडल आइडिएशन है तो उसका मतलब ये है कि वहां 500 लोगों को डिप्रेशन है। अगर एक ने सुसाइड किया है तो उसका मतलब ये है कि वहां 500 लोग जो है उनको सुसाइडल आइडिएशन है। तो ये 3 बहुत अहम चीजें हैं। तो सुसाइडल आइडिएशन को नापने के लिए हमने WHO का जो है सुसाइडल मॉड्यूल इस्तेमाल किया, ताकि हम बिल्कुल सबसे अच्छे तरीके से अपने इलाके में इन चीजों को मेजर करें, ताकि हमें पता हो कि कितना मसला है। आप देखें कि कितना मसला है। ग्लोबली प्रिवेलेंस ऑफ डिप्रेशन जो है 10 है, 10%, जबकि हमारे इलाके में गेजर में 10.9 है और हुंजा गोजाल में 15.9 और नगीर में 19.4 है। अब हुंजा गोजाल में अलग से देखें तो फिर गोजाल में कम है, हुंजा में 20% है, गोजाल में 10% है। और इसी तरह गेजर में देखें तो यासीन और गुपिज में ज्यादा है बनिस्बत इश्कोमन पोनियाल का। तो ये एक बहुत बड़ा मसला है हमारे पूरे इलाके में, क्योंकि जब डिप्रेशन होता है तो हम अपने ऑब्जेक्टिव अचीव नहीं कर सकते, उससे फिर दूसरी बीमारियां होती, दूसरे मसले होते। अच्छा, ये आप देखें कि हमारे वहाँ एजुकेशन का लेवल क्या है। तो it is very fortunate that we have very good educational record. We can be very proud of the education level, because very high level of education, particularly in Hunza Gojal. You can see only 9.8% are illiterate. And in Nagir, 13% are illiterate. In Ghizar, 24% are illiterate. So like my parents belong to this red category, because my both parents never been to school, because there was no school during their time. But now we are fortunate that we have many schools through our health education system and through our government system, many school opportunity, and then so our youth are getting education. That is very good news. So we are proud of it. But it is very interesting to note when I will show the suicide mortality, and then you can compare where most kids are dying, in which families, the educated one, uneducated one, where, so that is why the epidemiology, it helps us to focus our resources and target our resources where there is a problem. So that is the beauty of epidemiology. Okay. So when you look at the gender, by gender, and you can note a strong disparity, like look at overall 18 versus 6, like three times more depression in females than males, adult males, age 18 years and over. And look at Hunza Gojal, a similar kind of situation, 8 to 21 ratio. And look at Nagir, 10 to 27 ratio. It is 3 times higher in females, and Ghizar also. So this is great disparity. Why our women are so depressed than the men? So this issue, and I will challenge my fellow educated females to come up to the challenge and to solve this problem with me. We can work together. And then you look at by age, there is not much. When you look at the global literature, the depression is more in older age, like 55, 64, and 65, and less than 18, usually less than 24. But in our region, you can see it is in more young population and young adult, it is more a problem of depression, unlike other countries, other developed countries. So this is another issue. So it raises question, so we can really, this research giving us answer, raising more question to ask, further ask question. Here you can see depression by marital status. So, and again, you look at females and males, females, the pink color. And आप देख सकते हैं कि unmarried female में कितना ज्यादा depression है. हर 4 में से हर एक को डिप्रेशन है फीमेल्स में. इतनी इसमें अनमैरिड में 25.3%. इसी तरह जो है मैरिड खवातीन में इससे कम है, लेकिन 16 जो है फीमेल में. और इसी तरह जो है जो बड़ी एज है उसमें तो मेल को किसी को डिप्रेशन नहीं है, 0 है जो मैरिड में, जबकि इसमें जो विडो और डाइवोर्स है. लेकिन इनमें जो आप जो मेल जो है वो ब्लू कलर है. यहाँ पे देखो कोई नहीं है ब्लू कलर का, जो विडो और डाइवोर्स है उनमें, लेकिन जो फीमेल विडो और डाइवोर्स है उनमें 14.3%. I'm sorry, some of you might not understand Urdu, but I have to also speak in Urdu because a lot of my audience is from rural villages, my fellow colleagues from rural villages. I want them to understand this finding. And when we look by job, so by job, when we look at it, if they are working in the government and if they are working in private and if they are working in business, if they are a student and if they are retired and if they are jobless and disabled. So you can see the disparity between male and female. Look at the females. Why our sisters who are working in private setting have such a high rate of depression, 16.9%, compared to those who are working in government job, they have only 5% depression. So this is an important question. It raises further question. What is the reason why those who are working in private have such a high rate of depression? And similarly, look at people who are working business, females have very high, and then students, male students 7.8 and female 29%. So it is huge challenge. And then retired, those in females much higher, 37.5%. On the other hand, when you look at males, it is mostly those who are jobless and those who are disabled. Because I saw a number of suicide in older people. There were few suicide in older people, but it was due to those who were disabled or a chronic disease. And then we were talking about the income. So what is the difference by income? So we asked about the total monthly income of each family, and those lowest tertile you can see more than the middle tertile and the highest tertile. And it is current cigarette smoking, and it is more in males. Luckily, very few females smoke cigarettes in this region. And when we look at the prevalence of depression by current cigarette smoking, so those who said yes, they have high proportion reporting depression than those who are non-smoker. Because drug abuse, cigarette, alcohol use is a risk factor for depression in a lot of other countries. And you look at that, school in those who have depression, they are mostly young, and those who have, it is mostly in those who are illiterate in elementary school and secondary school. But those who have college or graduate, postgraduate, they have lower prevalence. And look at the impact of violence. One of the major reasons for violence, for depression is violence, domestic violence. For example, if our married couples, if husband do not commit violence against women, we can have only 37%, because there's no IPV, intimate partner or husband violence. The prevalence for depression was 37%, but those women where there was violence by husband, 55%. It is not only women. We are destroying our children. The first time when children see any violence is at home, when there is violence by husband, mother and father. This is very serious impact on our child's growth, their intellectual growth, their health. So we have to work on this. And then relation with mother-in-law is very important in married women. जो शादीशुदा लोग हैं उनमें आप देखें जिनके साथ जिनके ताल्लुकात बहू के साथ, वो मदर इन लॉ के साथ जिनके ताल्लुकात अच्छे हैं, तो उनमें डिप्रेशन कम है, 100 में से 32 को है. लेकिन जिन्होंने कहा गुजारा ताल्लुकात है या पुअर ताल्लुकात है, कितना हाई प्रिवलेंस है डिप्रेशन का, 44 and 47%. तो ये बड़े मेजर इश्यूज है ये दो. अब हम देखते हैं सुसाइडल आइडिएशन की प्रिवलेंस कितने हैं. सुसाइडल आइडिएशन और ओवरऑल 3.3 है वो फीमेल है और मेल में 1.3. अगेन डिस्पैरिटी, मोर फीमेल्स हैव सुसाइडल आइडिएशन देन मेन. And when we look at each of these districts, the same trend continues. In Ghizar also, 2 times more in females, and in Nagir also 2 times more in female. So in Ghizar, it is 3 times more. You know, when suicidal ideation come, the Ghizar is most badly hit, you know, than the other 2 districts. And you can see suicide by age. Also, it is more common in younger age. Look at, you know, 18 to 34. It is high prevalence. And then also in 45 to young adults also. And by monthly household income, those who are in the lowest tertile, particularly females, you know, are affected and they have high prevalence of suicidal ideation. And similarly, those in the middle tertile, compared to those highest tertiles, they have low prevalence. So income also plays a role, but not the major cause. And similarly, occupation. You can see that student 7.1%. So we have to further work on students, you know, why they have such a high, what are the stressors for students to have such a high rate. And then disabled, you know, particularly older people are disabled, they have one of the highest suicidal ideation, 20%. And by marital status, you can see that in unmarried, in females, it is high. When you compare it with global average, it is less than 1%. So in our area, it is much, much high. And by education, you know, by men and women, you can see again, you know, in young people, particularly those in secondary level education, and some of those in the postgraduate also, in men particularly. So why they have such a high rate of suicidal ideation? And suicide plan. So this is those who have not only suicidal ideation, but they actually plan to commit suicide. So when we ask this, you know, we get this rate, the prevalence you can see overall 1.3%. In Ghizar, it was 1.2. In Hunzagoja, it was 1.4. And in Nagir, it was 1.5. So this is the suicidal ideation prevalence. And those not only plan, but actually attempted to do the suicide, you know, and then you look at the prevalence. So those who actually attempted to commit suicide is very serious thing. So these people are more likely to do again suicide, you know, commit suicide, unless they have been treated. So you can see that overall it is quite high in Ghizar, 63%, Hunzagoja 75%, and Nagir relatively low. Either it is underreported or it is less actual attempting suicide. But these 3 regions, these other 2 regions, high rate. And this is a very important question. Did they look for help? क्या इन्होंने जब suicidal ideation जिनको होती है, इन्होंने क्या किसी से मदद ले ली, किसी डॉक्टर के पास गए? तो आप देखें कि गिजर में बहुत कम लोग जो है डॉक्टर के पास गए जिनको suicidal ideation है, 13.8%, 86.2% नहीं गए किसी के पास. इसी तरह हुंजे में जो है हालात बहुत अच्छे हैं, 50% डॉक्टर के पास गए, 50% नहीं, और नगीर में तो कोई भी नहीं गया, 100%. तो इसकी वजह क्या है? इसकी वजह यह है कि बहुत सारे इस्लामी ममालिक में सुइसाइड को कोई ऑफेंस या कोई जुर्म नहीं है. हमारे इलाके में समझते हैं कि ये जुर्म है और वो इस खौफ से नहीं जाते हैं डॉक्टर के पास कि पुलिस को पता न चले और हमें अरेस्ट ना करें. कितनी गलत चीज है. जब तक हम ये नहीं जाएंगे तो ये कैसे बचेंगे? तो इस पे हमने प्रायोरिटी तौर पे हम सब ने मिलकर काम करना है कि ये चीज हम अपने इलाके से हटा दें कि किनको अटेम्प्ट किए हैं, सुइसाइडल आइडिएशन है, उनको जरूर जाना है. बहुत सारे इस्लामिक ममालिक ने इस्लाह को खत्म किया है, पुराना जो है गलत किस्म का ला था उसको खत्म किया है. तो हमें भी अपने इलाके में ये चीजें जो है डिस्करेज करना चाहिए. वो किसी तकलीफ से वो करते हैं तो उसको कोई वो नहीं है, उनको हेल्प लेना चाहिए. तो ये बहुत सीरियस इशू है. इसके बाद जो है सीक हेल्प फॉर सुइसाइडल आइडिएशन बाय जेंडर. तो जेंडर में भी देखें तो जो मेल है, द मेल like 80% do not get help, and 19.3% only in female. Sorry, in female only 19.3% get help, and in male in female 87% do not get help. And then compare this with male, 27 versus 72%. But even in male, a high proportion are not getting help. So this is a serious issue. And this is again who attempted, he actually attempted. How many of them get help? In Ghizar, it is very, discouraging, 5.3% only. 94.7% do not get help. And it is better off in Hunza-Gojal, 16.7% at least get help. And again, in Nagir also, 20% get help when they actually attempt, because when you actually attempt, if you have taken poison or if you are injured, it is serious situation, so they take it. And the other important question is, if attempted, and by gender, you can see again disparity also. So what we do, we did a study about suicide, about suicide in Ghizar. I just wondering if I missed one slide. So we did a study there, a case control study, which I'm not yet sharing the result because I have to further work on it. But then the study we did, those who committed suicide was very, very elaborate. So we got a complete list of all those who committed suicide. This was 350 cases from Ghizar who committed suicide. So we confirmed resources that is true from police, from Khan Health Services, from local, people, community leaders and all this, and we get complete list. And then we visited those where they committed suicide, those households. And then the information we got was from their close friends. What happened when somebody, plans suicidal ideation, they do not share with their family at all, everywhere. So they share with their best friends, some of things. That is why we went to every friend of the person, male or female, who committed suicide. So we had very useful information. If we had just depended on the house where they committed suicide, we could not got real good information. And then we calculated suicide rate. For that, we looked at in each district, in this district, how many people committed suicide out of the total population. We got the total population from 1998 census population and the current census to see the growth rate, and then we calculated the rate, suicide rate, which is more dependable. And you can see here, I'm now talking about those who committed suicide. तो इसमें से जो टोटल हमारे पास नंबर था, कुछ का हमने जब चेक किया तो पता चला कि ये सुसाइड का केस नहीं था, उनको हमने शामिल नहीं किया। जो एक्चुअल सुसाइड केस थे वो 240 थे। अब उनमें से देखें कि ये किस एज में सुसाइड करते हैं। हमारे वहाँ गिजर में, ये डेटा गिजर का है, ये जो है हुंजा, गोजाल और नगिर का डेटा हमारे पास नहीं है, ये गिजर का डेटा है। तो गिजर में आप देखें कि जो रेड लाइन फीमेल्स को और जो ग्रीन लाइन मेल को देखिए, तो देखें अगर हमें इस पे काबू पाना है तो हमारा टारगेट पॉपुलेशन क्या है। हमारा टारगेट पॉपुलेशन जो है वो 35 ईयर से आइडियली 40 ईयर्स से नीचे, 40 ईयर्स से 10 ईयर्स तक बहुत ही यंग बच्चों ने 10 ईयर्स में सुसाइड किया। तो 10 से लेकर ये जो है ये हमारा टारगेट एज होना चाहिए कि हम इन बच्चों को कैसे हम उन तक पहुंचे, उनको हेल्प करें, जबकि बाकी ये इतना कम है, इसमें इतनी वो नहीं है। असल चीज ये जो यंग ग्रुप है, इस पे हमें काम करने की बहुत जरूरत है। अच्छा, और ये देखें कि पर ईयर रेट, ये जो है आप देखें कि 14 और 20, 24, जबकि ग्लोबल जो एवरेज है वो सुसाइड का 10% है, 10 पर 100,000 है। इस लिहाज से हमारे इलाके में तकरीबन डबल है, तो काफी हाई रेट है हमारे इलाके में। फिर हम मैरिड एंड अनमैरिड लोगों में देखें तो ज्यादातर सुसाइड जो है 100 में अगर 100 सुसाइड है तो 60% जो है अनमैरिड में है और 40% जो है मैरिड में है। तो इसको जहन में रखना जरूरी है। फिर आप देखें कि ये सुसाइड कैसे कौन से घरों में होते हैं, where this suicide take place, those who have high education level or those who have low education level. So make sure this is general population. This is a random sample of adults age 18 to 70 years. So this is sample of male and female, and you can see that even no schooling in female is 33% and 19% in male. So high education level. Now we go to see where actually the suicide occurs. You see that those houses where a daughter-in-law committed suicide, and look at the house education. In those houses, the education in female, 95% illiterate. And male 40%. So where it is happening? So the most of suicide is happening in those households where both parents are illiterate, or one of the parent is illiterate. And there is a reason for it. The reason is that in our area, there have been fast changes. मेरे एक एंथ्रोपोलॉजिस्ट प्रोफेसर ने मेरे साथ गांव का विजिट किया हमारे इलाके का, और हमारी हिस्ट्री, हमारी चीजों का खोजने के बाद बताया कि जितनी तब्दीली आपके इस इलाके में पिछले 50 साल में आई है, ये तब्दीली अमेरिका में 400 साल में आई। आपकी ये तब्दीली 50 साल में आई और ये तब्दीली अमेरिका में 400 साल में। तो वो कहता था कि अब ये आपके लिए अच्छा है या बुरा है, मैं कुछ नहीं कह सकता, लेकिन ये अमेजिंग रैपिड प्रोग्रेस है। मेरी पहली स्टडी गेजर में 95 में मैंने की थी। उस वक्त मैं AKU में पढ़ाता था। I got a grant from AKU and implemented this study on hypertension prevalence in Ghizar. At that time, nobody had a television. Nobody had these kinds of modern, communication skills, no cell phone. So they had to go to headquarters to make a call. So there was no cell phone in every household or every village. There was no electricity in the village in 1995. And now see so much changes. And then in these changes, our kids, our young girls and boys are attached to the global world. They see their rights. They see that they must have a choice. But our people who are particularly illiterate are very resistant. So there is so much wide gap between the old people and young generation, and they do not understand each other. That is the major problem here. So how we can educate our young generation to understand that our old people are from old age era, they had different standard of life, and now, so we have to bridge this gap. So unless we focus these people, we cannot bridge this gap and we cannot control suicide. So it is very important thing. And look at those, unmarried kids who committed suicide. And you look at the illiteracy level, very high, 79 in those households where there was a suicide, because we asked, what was the education of their father, what was their education, illiterate people. So what I am saying from my study is 90% suicide is only in those households where are either both or one illiterate parent. So if we have to work, we have to focus those households. If we do not focus our attention properly, we will not achieve the result. It is possible that we can prevent it, but it needs community-based approach. It needs health promotion and health prevention technique. And we, this study help us where to focus our resources. Another interesting thing I found that a lot of these suicide occur during spring and summer, very few in autumn and winter. When I'm looking at the global literature, they saw a relationship between heat of the year, heat of the season. So there were more suicide in warmer places than colder places. But that does not really explain this phenomena. So I don't know what is exact reason why our so many kids are. Maybe it is a time that there is more work in the field and where the daughter-in-law is not fulfilling the expectation of female mother-in-law, because mother-in-law was using so all the time. She was, these old females, particularly illiterate, and then they expect the same thing what was happening to them those many years ago from the current daughters who even not learn how to cook nice food, or they were all the time in school and college. So there is mismatch, and maybe it is increasing during those times when there's more work in the field, but that we do not have a clear answer about this. And then we here should focus before end our time, what are the main reasons of suicide in Ghizar? Number one is that depression. 28.6% people were known depressed people, and they were diagnosed by doctors and they had depression. And for this depression also, the causes might be the other one. The social factors we are highlighting here might have been the cause of their depression. We don't know. But the major cause of suicide is not proper treatment of people who have depression, not proper diagnosis, not proper treatment. The second important cause is, law related issue. What is happening is the young kids, they are, in my time, there was separate female schools, separate male schools, and we had not the opportunity even to talk. But now it is a co-education, and then males and females. That is the way to go forward. That is the actual thing. But and then law is a natural thing. It is somebody can like a female, can like a male, and male can like female. The parents have to educate and gradually help them understand. But what happened that our reaction of the parents and brothers is totally irrational. They jump out on it. So for example, I can give many examples. Like in one instance, the brother come and noted that there was a call number of this boy. The brother know, and then said, how come you do that? Why you call it? And then actually this lady was engaged to this person, but it was not acceptable to the brother that before marriage she can talk. So she threw her cell phone, and then later the father came and he beat her. And then early morning, she just jumped from the, height. This was in Hatun, for example, from where she jumped and died, So, and then there was another issue where, for example, the one boy told his friends that she liked this girl. And then his friends told their brother, this boy says that he likes your sister. And then brother came and beat up this guy that how you dare to like our sister, and then wrote to his father, that your son likes our sister, that is not proper. And when he went to home, then the father beat him up so severely that next morning he tried to commit suicide by jumping in the river. But the river was not deep and he was rescued. And after like 6 months, he wrote a letter to the brother that I have never touched your sister. I just like it. It was natural. But no, I'm not here in this world. Please don't beat him. I really love her. Don't beat her, please. And with this letter, he took pistol of his father and shot him up. So there are many such instances which are law-related things, which our older generation cannot understand that it can happen, and how rational way they should treat this. We have to teach parents how to deal this issue. And then the other thing is that, for example, in old age, like I'm not that much old, but in my time also, we would not say that we will marry with some girl, and then our parent will say that you have to marry this girl, or they will say the girls had no choice, they just whatever they want, they marry. But now our daughters, our sisters are educated. They know what is rational, so they have a right. We should understand them. A life partner, they have a right to select their life partner, So this thing we have to educate to our parents. Otherwise, this problem cannot be solved, because this is the one of the major issue. 17.3% of the suicide was due to this issue. And the other issue was mother-in-law problem. So there is this mother-in-law problem, that mother and daughter-in-law could not do well, and then it's because they are in such a position that mother-in-law is kind of chief of the household. Particularly, your husband is working down country or in army, and you are just mother-in-law is in charge, and she treats badly, then there is no escape. And what happens with this treatment, that she gradually loses hope. she gradually loses her resilience and she depressed and then commits suicide. I will give one example to, okay, my time is up, so we cannot do a lot of discussion. Just I quickly finish it. So the other thing is, we say that education related, that they failed and then jumped in the river. What happened when we asked their friends that they told, before committing suicide, they shared with their friends that my father wants me to get the first division in the school. I tried my best, but last time, I again failed in one subject. I could not top. So this kind of wrong expectation of parents from their kids is a serious issue. We have to educate parents that you should not, that everybody cannot top. There may be other, their son might have other skills. The other one is family related discards. This is the other issue. And then financial issue, 7%. It is one of the factors, but it is not major factor. The major factors are other. And then chronic diseases, and then others. So these are the main causes. We have to further tease out, understand properly, and work on it to address this issue. Okay, so this is my last slide. So those people who had depression, you can see that a lot of them, where they got treatment. Only 27% get treatment from doctor, only 27%, 28% went to proper treatment. They went to psychiatrist, but 40% went to Khalifa or faith healer, So how we can include Khalifa in our system and educate that they refer to psychiatrists, so they properly diagnosed, properly treated. Because a lot of people who are even suicidal ideation after treatment, they became normal, So this we have to address. So I really appreciate your attention. I was trying to finish it. Maybe I was too fast. I hope you understood it. But inshallah, you will get recording. And if you have any question you do not understand, please let me know. Now I will ask Dilshad to go ahead with her answer question session. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Dr. Shah, for sharing such a valuable information and experience with us on your research-based findings. We will now open the floor for all your questions. So please remember to ask your questions using the Q&A button. Refer your questions to both panelists and attendees so that all can view. We are receiving a ton of questions here in the chat box and the Q&A box as well. So I'm going to read our first questions from Nizar Muhammad. He says, what was the instrumentation that was used to collect data? Was it a quantitative study? Was it one-to-one interviews or other methods utilized? Mr. Shah, Mr. Dr. Shah, can you just talk about this?
Yes, I got I understood. I understood the question. Okay. So we use all these techniques. We did a qualitative study and key informant interview. We use, so it is mixed design for the suicidal mortality, mixed design, where we did key informants are the best friend of the person who committed suicide. So this was qualitative study, but we got a quantitative study. So because we got the denominator population and people who committed suicide, so we calculated rate, So this is first study which calculated the rate, where you have the census population as denominator and the numerator. So it is both quantitative and qualitative. For other two studies, suicidal ideation and depression, this was a quantitative study. It was a cross-sectional survey of a random sample. So we randomly selected household in all these districts, and then we got this data.
Great. Thank you so much, doctor. And thank you, Mr. Nizar, for your great question. Wow, so many questions. I hope we have time to answer them. So our next question comes from Mr. Azmat Riaz. Depression rate is retired was quite high. However, suicidal ideation in the same group is very low. What do you think might be the case? Dr. Shah, please.
So yes, this is a very important observation, Dr. Azmat. She's a gynecologist and very, highly qualified colleague from Hunza. So thank you. I appreciate your question. It is, it is always the same that, when you look at the depression in any country, it is always higher than suicidal ideation. But when you look at the suicidal ideation and committed suicidal ideation is always higher than the committed, because all those who depressed, will not go to the next stage to do the suicidal ideation, and the next stage to commit suicide. So that is common pattern when you do population-based studies.
Thank you, doctor, and thank you, Azmat Riaz. I hope this helps. Our next question is from Sanubar Fazal says, Dr. Shah, how you relate co-education with suicide and mental health? Did you found it in your study or its assumption on the basis of the culture?
No, it is not, we should encourage co-education. We should learn male and female working together, live together. It is Swell society, all Swell society across the globe uses co-education, so we should encourage, we should continue, but we will learn, at this stage, because it is our beginning. We have just started this, our young generation, that they have this opportunity to talk, to be friend with their male and female partners, because life they have to spend together, but the issue is that issue is with us parents. Lot of our parents are not educated, are very rigid in all system. So we have to kind of communicate. We have to teach both our young generation and our parents that what is what is proper, how to address issues. We should not make irrational decisions.
Okay, thank you so much. Let's go to the one question asked from Nizar Muhammad. He's still asking that for Ghizar you used mixed design methodology, case study. Why not a phenomenology study design instead of case study? So would that not be appropriate here? What were some of the research questions for the participants during your data collection? So the real number could be higher than what do you showed. So participants could be, maybe they don't get it like the interview. So what is the margins of error in your study? Can you just elaborate this?
Very, very important question. Yes, there are many ways of looking the problem, with the different lens. I am epidemiologist, so I use epidemiological tool, and we have, we can use always qualitative studies. So mixed method we call in epidemiology when you have an element of quantitative study and an element of qualitative study. So in my study in Hunza and in Nagar, it was a quantitative study. I did not use any qualitative study. In qualitative studies, and there are other methods of doing studying, suicide, but I am talking from an epidemiological viewpoint. I am epidemiologist, and in epidemiology, we can use mixed design where, for example, the suicide mortality study was a mixed design because we selected age-based cases who committed suicide and age and village-based controls who did not commit suicide, which was a quantitative study, a case control study. It is called case control study in epidemiology. But in the other one, it was qualitative. So what about, refusing in those things? Yes, this is a very valid question because your error can increase if people do not. That is why we selected those people who speak the local language. For example, our nurses were from Yasin, from Ishkomen, from Hunza, and in Gojal, we do not have nurses. So we hired 2 clinical psychologists who had done masters from Qaid-e-Azam University. So they were in our team. So they asked questions in, so they knew both Gojali language and Brushiski language. So we had a proper training and proper way. So we believe that our study is a very high quality study. Thank you.
Thank you, doctor. Thank you so much for your kind responses to so many great questions. And let us another one. So I got a question from Taskeen from Pakistan. She's asking about suicide. So she's saying that is this a symptom of bigger malaise, or why high heels have high suicide rate? And she's saying that is suicide is psychotic disorder or it's type of madness? And again, she's saying that is suicide becomes a fashion, a range of copycat, or how can we control these things? Can you please explain this question to her?
Your example as copycat is true that, when that is why when we do intervention, we do research, we should understand all these things, for example, media, when they highlighted media, a lot of people started committing suicide. So this is a very serious issue. When we go toward intervention, we have to keep all this in mind. That is why we should not, when we plan, like in my study, for example, we had clinical psychologists, we had psychiatrists, when I was designing the study, I get input from all these. So we have to be very careful. It can happen. So it is true that we have to be very careful about these things. These are true.
Okay, thank you, doctor.
It is yes, it is psychotic disease. You know, when you have stress and depression and its level increases, then you gradually, there are two things which can help us to prevent. One is self-esteem, you know, self-esteem, and this is very important, and resilience. And how increase our self-esteem? When you treat it badly over a period of time, you lose your self-esteem. Then you are more vulnerable to commit suicide. On the other hand, one person who has high self-esteem, although there are more difficulties, but he or she will face those and never commit suicide. So that is why we have to assess self-esteem also in these people, and then find out. For example, we conducted studies in UAE here, where I measure self-esteem, and I found a good relation between self-esteem and these things. You know, so we need further studies to understand further these things. Thank you.
Thank you. So we value all your questions. One more thing, I'm going to correct it. The first question asked from it was from Nazir Ali Muhammad, not Nizar Ali Muhammad, because he wants me to correct the name too. And thank you for your great question. So now I'm going to ask one more question. It's from Rina Zaman. She's saying that, did you manage to arrange any awareness session in order to remove the suicidal ideation?
Okay. You know, I conducted session in Ghizar, for example. I asked DC arrange all to invite all teachers and all you know, religious scholars and other people. So there were different religious scholars, masjid imams, and I asked them, police, you know, particularly police are very important. So they invited police. So I made a very detailed presentation, why suicide is happening, what we should do, you know, because there is some concern that maybe we are not regularly praying, and this thing, it is not only that is important that we should be regular in prayer. But one of my person who committed suicide was the mosque leader in one of the village, and he had thalassemia and he was depressed, and then finally he committed suicide. So anybody can commit suicide. So this was a session. Then in Hunza, you know, I contacted DC. He arranged a similar meeting, and I communicated this. So while doing study, you cannot do everything, you know. So that is why, to do properly, this provides a platform. This study provides a platform, and then we have to work on this further.
Thank you so much, doctor. Again, the questions are still coming in. All the questions are really amazing, and we have to discuss. Like, we're gonna take your 5 more minutes. Thank you. Aziza Shine is asking that, how can we as a health professionals play our role to overcome the prevailing issues of suicide in our region?
Yes, but you know, everyone has a very important role. For example, as an epidemiologist, a clinical epidemiologist, here I played my role, that I took my time. I'm very busy here, but still I took time and did something which is useful for our next step, you know, for work. So we should all combine our energies and work together, you know. So particularly, you know, we should work with the government. So when I was doing this study, I get ethics approval from university, but I got government permission also. I met with the chief secretary, and chief secretary invited doctors to work with me to facilitate my work. So it was very useful, you know. So he directed the you know, director of health to help me. So, and similarly, we have to work together. We can prevent it, you know. If we work together and we develop a system and work together, we can play a major role.
Thank you so much. Let's process one more question. Do you think there is a relationship between level of river flow with more cases of suicide in summers instead of winters?
Okay, that is very, very good question. That is why, you know, I further teased out it, because that was my question also. Maybe it is why jumping in the river, maybe in some places where, so I look at separately in Ishkomen, you know, and in other villages, and then, so I did not see any relationship with the amount of water. But the presence of river is naturally a very big cause of mortality, because it is lethal, you know. So why in all other countries in the globe, suicide is 3 times higher in men than women? We are opposite, totally opposite. And one of the major reasons is that, in those suicide, they're using poison and they do not die. But here they're just jumping in the river. So it is so lethal. It is like, shot with a gun. So, and then it is such a that it is water is available everywhere, so it is very difficult. So, but there was no relation, the quantity of water.
Thank you so much for your kind response, and thank you all for your great question. But this will be our last question for Dr. Shah from Qayyum Ali. He says, social issues major contributor for suicides rather than clinical mental illness. Please verify.
Can you repeat the question, please?
Social issues major contributors for suicides rather than clinical mental illness. Please verify on it.
What he's asking, I'm not clear. Is there?
He is just trying to relate like social issues and clinical mental illness. So he's just asking you to, can you just?
Yes, yeah. Okay. Oh, yes. If you are depressed, you are more likely to have poor control of your blood pressure. You are more likely to not proper manage your diabetes. So it is so much related with the poor outcome of other conditions. It is very, very important cause. That is why it is very important issue, because you have depression, you have very poor outcome if you have hypertension, if you have diabetes, and then you can develop this disease because of your stress. So it is, yes, it is very strong relationship.
Okay, thank you. That concludes our Q&A portion of this webinar. If we were unable to ask your questions, please feel free to contact us on our social media platforms for more information. Again, thank you everyone for taking time to join us in today's webinar. I hope you have learned a lot about today's topics covered. Please share all you have learned today with your loved ones who may have experiences in suicidal ideation and depression in today's youth. Remember to connect with us for updates on our upcoming webinars via our social media platforms. I would also like to thank our RF panelists and our honored guest speaker, Dr. Saeed M. Shah, for sharing his vast knowledge and expertise with us through his current research findings, making this event very useful, successful, and for the great services you offer, Dr. Shah. Again,
I very much appreciate your help throughout this. And I am very sorry for those who could not attend last time, but I am very thankful who came to attend this session. But particularly, I am very thankful to Rupani Foundation. It is a great initiative. Living in USA, reaching out to vulnerable population in remote places like my villages and other places is great contribution from this foundation. I am very proud. I feel proud to present my research through this platform. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Again, thanks to all participants for joining us today. Remember, we highly appreciate your feedback. Please take a few moments to fill out the survey at the conclusion of this webinar. Remember to stay connected and register for our upcoming webinar on women's health through one's lifespan, presented by Dr. Ambani on June 23rd. From all of us at Rupani Foundation USA, we would like to say goodbye and have a good weekend.